The coronavirus isn't stopping Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders from campaigning, at least not yet. Both men were out in force today, touting new endorsements ahead of 5 new primaries and 1 caucus this Tuesday. Here's Nicole Killian.
I have decided that I am, with great enthusiasm, going to endorse Joe Biden for President of the United States.
California Senator Kamala Harris made it official, becoming the 8th former presidential candidate to back Joe Biden. Harris ended her own bid in December, gaining prominence for this debate moment when she challenged the former vice president over desegregation and school busing.
So, on the issue of race, I couldn't agree more that this is an issue that is still not being talked about truthfully and honestly. There is not a black man I know, be he a relative, a friend, or a coworker, who has not been the subject of some form of profiling or discrimination. Growing up, my sister and I had to deal with the neighbor who told us her parents couldn't play with us because we were black. And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of 2 United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the 2nd class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
It's a mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true, number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that. I was a public defender. I didn't become a prosecutor. I came out and I left a good law firm to become a public defender when in fact my city was in flames because of the assassination of Dr. King. Number one. Number two, as the Vice President of the United States, I work with a man who, in fact, we worked very hard to see to it we dealt with these issues in a major, major way. The fact is that in terms of busing, you would have been able to go to school the same exact way because it was a local decision made by your city council. That's fine. That's one of the things I argued for, that we should be breaking down these lines. But so the bottom line here is, look, everything I've done in my career, I ran because of civil rights. I continue to think we have to make fundamental changes in civil rights. And those civil rights, by the way, include not just only African Americans, but the LGBT community.
But Vice President Biden, do you agree today that you were wrong to oppose busing in America then?
No.
Do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the 2nd class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local decision. So that's where the federal
government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people.
I have supported the ERA from the very beginning when I ran
Vice President Biden, 30 seconds, because I want to bring other people into this.
I supported the ERA from the very beginning. I'm the guy that extended the Voting Rights Act for 25 years. We got to the place where we got 98 out of 98 votes in the United States Senate doing it. I've also argued very strongly that we, in fact, deal with the notion of denying people access to the ballot box. I agree that everybody, once they, in fact, they should. Anyway, my time's up.
Another former candidate, Senator Cory Booker, joins us from Detroit First on CBS this morning with his endorsement. Senator Booker, thanks for being with us. Good morning. Why are you endorsing Joe Biden?
I wanted to return back to this issue of black voters. I have a lifetime of experience with black voters. I've been one since I was 18. Nobody on this stage should need a focus group to hear from African-American voters. Black voters are pissed off, and they're worried. They're pissed off because the only time our issues seem to be really paid attention to by politicians is when people are looking for their vote. And they're worried because the Democratic Party, we don't want to see people miss this opportunity and lose because we are nominating someone that isn't trusted, doesn't have authentic connection. And so that's what's on the ballot, and issues do matter. I have a lot of respect for the vice president. He has sworn me into my office as a hero. This week, I hear him literally say that I don't think we should legalize marijuana. I thought you might have been high when you said it. and let me tell you, because marijuana in our country is already legal for privileged people, and the war on drugs has been a war on black and brown people. And so let me just say this. With more African Americans under criminal supervision in America than all the slaves since 1850, do not roll up into communities and not talk directly to issues that are going to relate to the liberation of children, because there are people in Congress right now that admit to smoking marijuana, while there are our kids are in jail right now for those drug crimes. And so these are the kind of issues that mean a lot to our community, and if we don't have somebody authentically, we lost the last election. Let me just give you this data example. We lost in Wisconsin because of a massive diminution, a lot of reasons, but there was a massive diminution in the African-American vote. We need to have someone that can inspire, as Kamala said, to inspire African-Americans to the polls at record numbers.
Thank you, Senator Booker. Vice President Biden, you can respond to that.
I'll be very brief. Number one, I think we should decriminalize marijuana, period. And I think anyone who has a record should be let out of jail, their records expunged, it be completely zeroed out. But I do think it makes sense, based on data, that we should study what the long-term effects are for the use of marijuana. That's all it is. Number one, everybody gets out, record expunged. Secondly, I'm part of that Obama coalition. I come out of the black community in terms of my support. If you notice, I have more people supporting me in the black community that have announced for me because they know me. They know who I am. 3 former chairs of the Black Caucus, the only African-American woman that ever been elected to the United States Senate, a whole range of people.
No,
my point is,
that's not true. The other one is here.
I said the first. I said the first African-American elected. First African-American. So my point is that one of the reasons I was picked to be vice president was because of my relationship, long-standing relationship with the black community. I was part of that coalition.
Well, look, it's a time for us to beat Donald Trump, and it became very clear to me that Joe Biden is the right person to do that. We have to unify and show our strength. And I think this Tuesday could be just a pivotal day in our primary progress. But it's about time we start unifying as a party and begin the work to beat Donald Trump and, frankly, save our nation, humanity, address our common cause and our common challenges.
Well, Senator, it's interesting how you phrase that, because it sounds like it's more about beating Donald Trump than it is about liking Joe Biden as a candidate. So let me ask you about some of your past comments regarding Joe Biden. You were critical of his vote for the '94 crime bill, which disproportionately affected African Americans. And I think people who are cynical about politics, they see somebody like yourself criticize a guy and then come out and back him, and they say, what changed?
Well, first of all, I love Joe Biden. He and I have had a great relationship for a long time. I wouldn't have run against him if I didn't think I was the best person to be the next president of the United States, but I'm out of the race. And as I look at him, I know factually from talking to him that some of my biggest issues, like criminal justice reform, like racial justice, like economic justice, that he is going to be a strong leader on that and can actually pull the country together, the kind of coalitions we need to actually make progress in those areas. So I'm enthusiastic about this decision. I'm determined to beat Donald Trump. I know he is a leader, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to bring honor back to that office.
Well, speaking of race, Senator Booker, this primary began as the most diverse field of candidates in it, and it comes down basically to these two older white gentlemen now. How does that happen, and what does it say about the Democratic Party?
Well, what I'm celebrating is I think a lot of people are waking up to the reality. African-American voters in the South, African-American voters here in Detroit, they have played a pivotal role in my entire lifetime in choosing the Democratic nominee. And what I'm excited about is to hear Joe Biden even growing in enthusiasm, because he's always been talking about it, and understanding the issues of race and, frankly, racial reconciliation, racial justice, and even saying things now about choosing a black woman on the Supreme Court. So I'm happy about the diversity of our nation. I'm happy to see the coalitions that Joe Biden is building. I'm happy that I know confidently that he's going to govern in a way that brings us together as a nation across racial, religious, even party lines to begin to do the business, because we know now more than ever our adversaries from China to Russia are building in strength and determination to undermine our democracy. Our divisions as a country is our weakness. We need the candidate that can best unify all of us, and that is Joe Biden.
Senator Booker, Senator Sanders said over the weekend that the establishment basically forced Amy Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg out of the race and ultimately to endorse Joe Biden, as you have. What do you say to that? Is the Democratic establishment ganging up on Bernie Sanders?
I don't think so. First of all, Bernie's my friend. I have a lot of respect for him and have worked with him in Washington, D.C. I just want us to get beyond pointing fingers at each other, trying to tear each other down. We can't tolerate that right now. The threat is in the White House. We're seeing that with the bungled way that he's been handling this challenge with the coronavirus, to his denying of science, not just the ones of his people around him, but even climate change science. This planet is in peril. We don't have time to fight against each other. We don't need to turn against each other. We need to turn to each other. And so I'm supporting Joe Biden because I think he's got the best chance of all the diversity in our party, of all the diversity across this nation. I think that in this particular time in history, he's the person to unify us and help us to beat Donald Trump and lead forward together.
All right, we've got to leave it there. Senator Cory Booker, thank you very much.
While Biden campaigned in Mississippi, Bernie Sanders countered in Michigan with an endorsement from civil rights leader Jesse Jackson.
I stand with Bernie Sanders today because he stood with me.
It is one of the honors of my life to be supported by a man who has put his life on the line for the last 50 years fighting for justice.
One key endorsement remains elusive for both candidates, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren.
So you're not endorsing anyone yet?
Well, it's tough. Maybe I'll just pull a New York Times and endorse them both.
Senator Harris appears with Biden in Detroit Monday. Sanders has spent all weekend in Michigan, but claims the state is not make or break for his campaign. Errol?
All right, Nicole, thank you for that.
Right before we went on air, ABC News has confirmed that Elizabeth Warren has dropped out of the race. But any predictions who you think she'll endorse?
Oh, she's discussing that right now. I think that most people would imagine that she's going to head towards Bernie. But there's also a chance that she doesn't endorse anyone for at least a particular period of time. They're going through a really emotional process right now. Her campaign team worked very, very hard. And I was stunned myself at Super Tuesday's results on several levels. So I think they're deliberating right now. I believe you're going to see them come out one direction or the other pretty soon.
But she goes back to the Senate now, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, she's still going to be fighting for working people for years to come. And I just want to tell an Elizabeth Warren story. I got calls from many of the other candidates when I suspended my campaign. And Elizabeth's call to me was so magnanimous and generous, and she had a tough night herself that night in New Hampshire, and you never would have known it. She's an amazing human being, an amazing leader behind the scenes as well.
Yeah. She would have made a great president, I think.
She would have made a great president.
Yeah. You all would have made great presidents. I'm sorry, you know. I mean, there are different.
I don't think everybody would have made a great president.
Well, I
could have lived without Marianne Williams.
Well, yes, but in looking, well, no, she has a whole other thing that she brings. But to me,
that's certainly
what we
one
have
way to put it. Yes.
Well, yeah, but what we have right now doesn't work at all. No, and I'll take any of them over this.
But look at the fantastic cabinet. Whoever wins the Democratic election is going to have, you know, I mean, look at all of you. Fantastic group of people for the cabinet and for other positions in the administration of probably Joe Biden. We don't know.
We don't know. We'll see who it is.
Yeah, someone called us the Avengers, which is nice.
Yeah, be great. Get this country back on track.
Yeah. Have you thought about endorsing anyone?
Joe called me a couple days ago. Democratic process play out. I've also said that everyone knows I ran on this idea of universal basic income, and that if a candidate were to come out powerfully for the freedom dividend, that would go a very long way.
Yeah.